Welcome back. I'm Brandon, the HBAR Bull, once again joined by Zepsi. Both of us do some contract work with the HBAR Foundation, but we don't do these weekly updates in any official capacity. We're just coming to you personally to give you the latest in the Hedera ecosystem. Welcome, Zep.
How's it going, Brandon?
It's going great. This week has been really busy. We only block off about an hour to record this, and I don't know if we're going to be able to get through it all. But as always, none of this is financial advice. Use it for entertainment or educational purposes only. So, of course, the big news this week was Dell joining the Hedera Governing Council, but we have some other really big news that we want to get into as well. But I did record with Shane. He's the CEO of the HBAR Foundation earlier in the week, and that was actually recorded after the announcement was made. But he was really integral in bringing Dell on as one of the governing council members. So certainly go check that out. But I did want to reiterate some of the numbers. Of course, they were founded in 1984. Their 2022 revenue was over $100 billion. They sell about 40 million computers per year. They have over 130,000 employees. And right now their market cap sits at about $30 billion. So Zenobia and Steve Todd, one of the representatives for Dell, did a gossip about gossip. And I grabbed a few of the highlights that I wanted to show real quick because it'll add some color to the rest of our conversation around Dell. So listen in real quick. Again, great job, Zenobia and Steve Todd.
And so what made you decide, hey, this is the time for us to join the governing council of a blockchain?
Well, I think there's two reasons really, Zenobia. The first one is, as I mentioned, we have a lot of infrastructure products. And our customers are increasingly moving from centralizing them in one location to distributing them across multiple locations, whether it's multi-cloud or whether it's edge. So we believe that a distributed ledger will be a critical part of the architecture for edge computing. We need some sort of a trusted, multi-party way to communicate business transactions. And so Dell is increasingly exploring distributed ledger technology, and Hedera has that enterprise focus that we really liked. So that's reason number one that we've decided to join. The second reason is that our customers are increasingly interested, experimenting with writing applications that run on distributed ledgers. So for us, when we join the council, right, to actually implement a node, right, a Dell server running on the Hedera network, we'll gain valuable experience that we can and then turn and share with our customers and help them on their journey to use distributed ledgers.
Yeah, what better way to really jump in and understand what it takes? I want to go back to edge computing for a bit because I think, that means different things sometimes to different people. So what kinds of ways are people thinking about edge computing, across your customer base, and exactly how distributed is that?
There's probably 7 or 8 different verticals, right, at least that are really growing with edge. Transportation is a great vertical. Retail, as you mentioned, going into a store. Medical is another one. And they all have this characteristic that data is being created far away from a data center, and it needs to be processed and handled immediately in a trusted way. And all of the thought leadership, all of the intellectual property, everything that we've built up in the data center, right, somehow all that trust needs to make its way out into those regions or those locations where the data is being manufactured. So we think that there is likely a distributed ledger nearby somewhere that can help with this trusted processing of data. And that's why we think distributed ledgers and edge computing is such a strong match.
Absolutely. And, you talked about the experience that you will gain from running a node. What other kinds of things or ideas do you have in terms of how you'd like to engage with either other governing council members or, play around with the technology or engage with other applications that are being built on the network?
Well, I think the biggest thing we're excited about in working with all these other council members is that they've already gone through the process of installing an enterprise class trusted server in their infrastructure and got it running, right, for a specific use case. and it may or may not be edge, right? So when we come to the council and we begin to collaborate with and work other companies like a Boeing or an IBM or a ServiceNow or a Google, we'll gain this visibility into, well, what kind of applications are they running? Because we'll bump into those customers. There probably will be Dell customers trying to solve those exact same problems. So we tap into this rich network of use cases that are already in flight, already have a lot of thought put behind them, and that can accelerate solutions for our customers, which is something we're really excited about.
I know Dell has done some other things in terms of decentralization of data. How far along do you think you are on your journey there?
Well, I would say that we recognize the intersection between distributed ledgers and edge many, many years ago. And we began to work on technologies to solve problems. And we decided to open source some of those technologies. So, for example, we open source something called Project Alvarium, which uses distributed ledgers to track trustworthy data in edge environments. So we believe now we can experiment with Hedera as one of those ledgers that can track the trusted movement and processing of data in all those verticals that I just mentioned earlier.
Anything else that you would like to share with the community or with your other fellow governing council members before we wrap up for today?
I'd just like to share with the community, we've already got a glimpse of what you're working on. We've already started joining your meetings and meeting all of you and looking forward to further collaboration with Dell.
All right, Zeb, so the one thing that I latched a hold of in that conversation was Alvarium, because it was something that was actually mentioned by Shane as well, and he told me to look into it, and I actually found a really good clip that explains it, so listen into that.
What if you no longer had to worry about your privacy? By next year, there will be nearly 30 billion devices out in the world, and more than 2.5 million apps. Add that to the computing and networking infrastructure that makes it all possible, and the AI and emerging tech that will push our capabilities even further, and we have a fundamental challenge: achieving trust at scale. We can address that trust challenge with the concept of a data confidence fabric, or DCF, an open vendor-neutral middleware stack that combines several key enabling technologies. Let's take a smart city, for example. From the infrastructure that enables it to the apps that provide real-time updates to citizens, being able to trust that accuracy, security, and privacy are maintained across public and private boundaries is critical. A DCF provides provenance for data so you know where it was created and where it's been. And it can provide both data and infrastructure with measurable, scalable trust to achieve any number of goals. With a trust fabric, a city could ensure that data remains uncompromised from the moment it's born at the edge, whether that data is created by things or by people. A data confidence fabric can also hit closer to home. The average person will have nearly 7 connected devices by 2020. With intersecting trust fabrics in place, no single company or brand owns the trust, enabling users' devices and applications to interoperate openly and confidently. Imagine a world where it's easy for your refrigerator to order food from your local grocer, yet critical devices, apps, and data that ensure your health and safety would get priority. Intersecting data confidence fabrics will provide consumers with more trusted experiences from service providers based on policies they set that balance their privacy with value. Trust fabrics facilitate scalable collaboration across heterogeneous ecosystems rooted in an open, interoperable edge. A DCF is comprised of various integrated technologies that each serve a different purpose. Examples include device-level root of trust, open data ingestion APIs, identity and access management, immutable storage, and blockchain. While default DCF components and related APIs and algorithms are driven by the community through open source collaboration, any loosely coupled component can be replaced with commercial value add. An organization's trust fabric can ingest data from both internal and external sources. Overall confidence in a given multi-party relationship reaches a natural equilibrium based on the sum of the trusted parts used. Trust is represented through a confidence score, with a higher score reflecting that data is more trustworthy. This also applies to the related apps and infrastructure processing and storing data. Combined, trust fabrics can deliver higher value across a heterogeneous ecosystem while also helping organizations meet requirements for security, privacy, and data compliance. Companies can also take their DCF dashboard further, customizing it with specific algorithms and indices to aid in data valuation. A manufacturer could deliver trusted telemetry from usage of their products in the field to their own quality department for future improvements, and have the opportunity to monetize certain data on data marketplaces, commanding maximum value due to higher trust in their data's integrity, all while meeting the privacy terms set by their customers. Trust fabrics will also help organizations scale meeting compliance requirements, such as GDPR and dealing with data sovereignty challenges. Imagine, for example, meeting compliance requirements and regulations in the energy sector. Trust fabrics can ensure that all stakeholders in the energy ecosystem are compliant with regulations, avoiding penalties and risk, all while enabling energy providers and consumers to collaborate openly for improved efficiency and overarching experience. Like the internet, no single individual or organization can own the global trust fabric. Anyone can create their own personal fabric and decide whom to invite into their circle of trust. An individual's or organization's circle of trust is part of a larger trust network that a data owner can choose to open up to or not. We created this world of data together, and together we'll build the fabric that protects, values, and truly harnesses it.
So I thought it was really impressive that Alvarium uses a lot of the same terminology, a lot of the same things that Lehman uses to describe Hedera. I think it's going to dovetail perfectly into all of Hedera's strengths. Of course, we saw that Ethereum and IOTA were a couple of the options there in that clip, but Hedera is going to be added to it, and I think HCS is going to be perfect for this use case. And it's really exciting around what they're talking about with Internet of Things as well. So again, Alvarium is going to be perfect for the Hedera network. I hope it gets integrated really quickly. But we also got some really good media coverage out of the Dell announcement. What did you think about what we saw there?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got another Fortune 50 in the ranks. Fortune 34 to be precise, which, like we say, every time a council member joins is just the business feat of having all these people on one organization. It only becomes more impressive each time. Obviously, it's been said before that those sort of first 5 council members, first 10 were the hardest, and after that point, the algorithm's there. But even so, you just can't help but being blown away each time. And this time, the media execution I thought was really well executed. Zenobia and the team there did a fantastic job. We had The Block covered it. We had CoinDesk. We had some other Web2 media publications. We had the Gossip About Gossip interview. We had your interview with Shane. All of the collateral was there immediately for everyone to be able to dive in and know exactly what's happening. And so this goes back to, we've said before that, the stance of council recruiting has kind of changed a bit. They want a governing council member to have a use case or something in mind. They want them to be more active with the community and the council itself. And already, clearly, we've seen that. We saw Aberdeen join. They did a great interview with Zenobia about tokenization, 508 billion pounds assets under management. They came in and that was the thing they spoke about. And then, Dell comes in, they mention edge computing, they mention Project Alvarium, but they also mention the thing that I really think is an exciting thing to cling on to, is that they're going to be developing openly. It's this real ethos of open source that exists within Web3, that exists within Web2 as well, actually. But it's this idea of sort of open innovation. The more people can see your trials and tribulations, the more people can see your successes and failures, the more people feel secure to enter the market. So for me, seeing a company like Dell, who, got massive off of hardware, but have been innovating in other industries since, and, since 2014, I believe Shane said, to see them who, a huge part of the internet is actually really built on itself, Dell as a provider there, to see them creating these sort of blueprints for the next generation, the next wave of institutional adoption of Hedera specifically, I think is just incredible. They're a leader, not just in their field, but globally. To be a Fortune 34, your clout extends everywhere. And so, the global audience of institutions, I believe, is going to be watching them as they demonstrate the real world utility of DLT. And, they're going to be there seeing how it's done, and hopefully they're going to all come in troves. But, we're going to see that obviously as it plays out. Time will tell. But definitely this open innovation to me is one of the most exciting things that I took away from it.
Very well said, but we have a lot of other stuff to dig into, so let's get into that. We'll first start with the meeting minutes. We actually had 2 meeting minutes come out, the ones from December. They mentioned Dell, so that's why they were a little bit delayed, and then the ones from January. So let's take a look. So the main 2 things that they highlighted from the December meeting minutes, of course, Dell joining the governing council, that was the main one. And the second one was how they're going to distribute the fee revenue that comes in. And they landed on an 80-10-10, 80 to the Hedera account, which covers operating expenses, 10% to the staking rewards account, and 10% to the nodes reward account. But I did find it interesting that CoinCom also proposed dividing that into thirds, a third to the Hedera account, a third to the staking account, and a third to the node account. Now, of course, right now, the fee revenue is relatively low, so it's not a really big deal right now, but it is interesting that they're talking about this and that it's going to be fluid. It's going to change. But right now, again, they landed on that 80-10-10. The next thing I wanted to highlight was they are talking about trusted nodes, or the non-council member community nodes. They talked about phase 1, where they're going to have 5 community nodes. That goes back all the way to when we had our initial 5 council members. So they're going to start with 5 in phase 1. They're going to go to 10 plus in phase 2, 20 plus in phase 3, and then of course eventually they're going to get to permissionless nodes in phase 4. One thing I wanted to note here is they're just contemplating at this point. So while I think it is possible that in 2023 we start to get these community nodes, it doesn't look like it's imminent. And something else from the December minutes that I think the community will be interested in, MEMCOM, or the membership committee, has set a goal to nominate the remaining 11 council members in 2023. Now, nominate doesn't mean announce, so it doesn't mean we're going to know all of those 11 council members, but it is good to have that goal, and it seems like they're going to remain pretty aggressive. And in the January minutes, again, they reiterated that they want to try to fill out those 11 remaining council seats. And I also noted in the Treasury Management, or CoinCom report, that they said Lehman updated the council members on CoinCom's recent discussions regarding staking. Because staking contributes to the security of the network, CoinCom has analyzed staking rewards in depth. CoinCom has analyzed staking rewards on analogous DLT networks and compared their rates to Hedera's rates. CoinCom has also considered likely TPS growth rate, so that's another way of saying revenue growth, account growth rate, and funding from outside sources like the HBAR Foundation to inform their staking recommendations. So of course, they're really focused on staking. We have some regulatory commentary we have on that a little bit later. And while it's not overly material, there was another thing that was mentioned in the January report that I thought was interesting. They said since the last council meeting, TechCom approved the following: recommendation to the board to remove Hedera's mainnet beta label. So we are moving into version 1. Anything else you wanted to cover as far as the January minutes?
Yeah, so picked up from Ari HBAR Staff Sergeant HBAR, was that in the council meetings, the most recent one published, Brett, of course, the chairman, Brett McDowell, said, thanks council member Google for offering to host the Q2 2023 council meeting. And that's in May the 19th to the 21st. So it looks like Google Cloud are going to be hosting the next meeting, council meeting, at their headquarters in California. So to me, that's a gesture of a company that wants to be at the front and center of Hedera, that they'll actually host the council, get all those caliber of people into one room. And for me, I think, just on a bit of a tangent here, so the guy that created Google Mail, I believe, he recently came out and actually said, ChatGPT has the potential with Microsoft and Bing to overthrow Google as a search engine. And so maybe that's a thought that they're having, but obviously it's me speculating. This is what Google might be thinking. But Google have been pushing more and more into Web3. They're clearly diversifying their offerings. They've obviously got the Google Cloud, which is a massive part of their infrastructure, but they're also moving, it seems, into DLT and Web3 more by the day. They've obviously worked with Solana recently to create a validator. They were at Paris Blockchain Week Summit hosting Twitter Spaces. And now, obviously, they've been part of the council for a long time, and now they're planning to host us all over there, the council being. So yeah, that's a really positive indicator for me to see Google making that bold gesture, and I'm looking forward to see what happens out there.
Yeah, they've always been really engaged, and hopefully that continues going forward. Of course, I'm always going to be excited about, large companies and engaged companies joining the governing council, but I'm getting even more excited about some of these use cases we see coming out. And we heard some of it in the Twitter space that we had on Tuesday about Fresh Supply Co. and some things about Mastercard. So let's listen in to what Rob and their CEO, David, had to say, and then we can talk about that a little bit.
What does FSCO or Fresh Supply do? We're a real world asset tokenization company, right? We ingest information around what's happening in the operational domain, primarily in the agri-food space, upstream and downstream, so pre-farm gate and post-farm gate. What use is that information, and what is the purpose of assets, real world assets being tokenized and persisting on Ledger? Well, it's to be able to tie those things, being able to track them through transformation, various transformations. So say a cow becomes boxed beef, milk becomes yogurt, becomes Chobani packs, becomes cartons, becomes pallets, becomes whatever it may be. So tracking these assets through transformation, who had them, who bought them, how were they transformed, and then utilizing those, especially on the downstream portion, post-farm gate and through the supply chain, taking specific event types. It's at the airport, it's cleared customs, it's fulfilling a standing order of, there's a purchase order, etc. So it's the real world asset portion meeting the kind of objective payment, what are the conditions precedent for a good to pay? Now, this is the part that will probably get everyone excited, which is everyone is familiar with going and tapping and paying with your Mastercard. Digital wallets have proliferated, especially on the phone, over the last couple of years, since especially since COVID, right? So being able to, when you're at 7-Eleven and you tap and pay, you get a good to pay. And Rob Scott heaps of payments experience, and we'll back me on this. The point of sale is saying, have they got the cash? Are they good to pay? And then the monies get remitted. So we apply this at a larger scale in the B2B space. And so, again, what everyone was getting quite excited about was the Mastercard portion. Again, speed, scalability, financial grade kind of payment triggering. We've done that with Mastercard for several years now, being the largest user globally of Mastercard provenance. Now, Mastercard primarily serves banks, right? And that's not their core business. That product is being sunset. And we looked around, we looked at the different options. We liked from the ESG portions, from the TPS portion. There's also positioning, right? So positioning is very important to me. So, and us, right, as a business, we're probably not the crypto anarchy punks types, we want to play nicely with TradFi. We want to have a hand-in-hand sort of journey with traditional financial institutions, right? And so there's a phrase, the adult in the room. We were really drawn to that. And yeah, so look, we had our own need. We needed to replace the ledger layer. We're doing that with Hedera. HBAR and Hedera are supporting us. Yeah, basically what I've said, where we do real-world asset tokenization and linking assets in one domain to a concurrent kind of, there's another parallel, which is the financial domain. So essentially, if you have an invoice, what are the assets attached to the invoice? What are the proof points? What are the event types? That is our expertise. And I think we are, how would I say it without blowing my own horn? Look, we're ninjas in that space, right?
I'm still trying to wrap my head around the Mastercard portion. Are you also going to be using, payments rails that are built on Hedera to facilitate some of this stuff as well?
So without getting everyone too excited, we'll be bringing that capability to Hedera. There's 3 layers, right? There's the application layer, there's a middleware layer, so FSCO, that's part of our stack. That's ours, that's our IP. And then there's what is the ledger that we're interacting with, right? So what are the event types that are needed to trigger a payment? And then facilitating a payment, again, part that will get people excited, whether that's DeFi, there's enough in public domain around what we've done in a reasonable scale, whether it's DeFi, card-based. So, we work with CBA, right? Commonwealth, that's the largest bank here in Australia. So the largest card-based supplier early payment program, yeah, we use Mastercard payment triggers. Again, our own need and capability on the ledger side will be going to Hedera. So think of any rails. So it could be DeFi, it could be to account, It could be a card, right? So we do use card. There are certain use cases where card is really effective. There's a security portion. There's the VCN or virtual card capability. So there is a supply chain angle, but we're really focused on the payment side. And if you have all these events and rich metadata around what's happening to assets in the supply chain, there's really two outcomes. One for us, one is, again, finance and payments. So there's a finance component. And then there's the ESG credentialing. But we do that typically at larger industry and government. I'm not going to comment on which national government uses us, but you'll find out soon enough.
Okay, and you're asking us not to get excited about this. Good luck.
So Brandon, I mean, if I can, David's unusually humble on this Twitter space. Is usually a lot more grandiose about Fresh Supply's kind of achievements. But if I can set this in context. So Mastercard have this provenance product, which is a private permission blockchain, and they've realized that it's not core to their business, and therefore they're going to kind of close it down. And FSCO is one of, if not the biggest user of that particular product. Being Mastercard, of course, it integrates with the Mastercard rails, and therefore it's leveraged by its users to trigger payments, as David said. What FSCO kind of focus on, which is kind of where I was drawn to them in the first place, is sort of significant supply chain implications. And I've always felt that supply chain is a perfect overlay to what Hedera can do, both on the HCS and the HTS, and the smart contract service as well, but the first two services primarily. So you've got this supply chain blockchain replacement, which Hedera is perfect for. You've got the integrations and hooks into those particular payment rails. But also on top of those two layers, you've got this kind of data aggregation, and this is where the true value is for FSCO. And that data can feed, financing, trade finance, and other kind of applications too. So, we've got the perfect kind of layer cake of capability that FSCO is bringing. And notwithstanding that, it's kind of cross-border, and it works with big banks and big payments providers and at the government level too. So, there's plenty of places we can go to with this on Hedera. We're starting the first few use cases, but, I'm super excited about how we can take this forward and expand. And, David's being rightly cagey about some of those things, and I have to kind of bite my tongue as well. But it's a really interesting and super exciting use case. Not wanting to overshadow, if we possibly could, the Dell announcement today, but good old Danny Eade did his normal detective work and threw up a load of questions which kind of required a little bit of clarification, which I did on Telegram, and before I knew it, it was kind of posted everywhere. So it was probably, I'll never learn, but it was worth kind of coming on here and clarifying today. So thank you for the opportunity.
All right, so Zeb, this was great to hear on a lot of different fronts. The one thing that really stuck out to me is that Mastercard was running a private blockchain solution, and they decided to stop doing it. It's not their core business. They found out probably it's not easy to run. It doesn't have as much trust because, the number of nodes, something along those lines. And of course, Hedera fits perfectly into a use case like what Fresh Supply Co. has coming out. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more in the months to come, so we'll keep a close eye on that one. But we're seeing things that we didn't even know about. Block Vendors came out with something that you highlighted. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so we saw today, I saw today, I didn't know when it came out. It came out yesterday. So there's a company called Block Vendors that has raised $1.5 million in pre-seed funding to create, leveraging, it says DLTs like Hedera, so I assume Hedera, to create an enterprise data exchange network that simplifies controlled data exchange between multiple parties without revealing raw data. And it says they've already got two major industry players in the USA, including a digital health company in the eye care industry and a global employee engagement platform provider. So I asked the HBAR Foundation internally, and they said, this isn't a grantee. So it seems like this looks like some kind of organic adoption completely outside of our ecosystem, with people that aren't even in contact with the people who are working to build out the ecosystem at the moment. So this really looks like someone's seen Hedera, seen the promise of it, and they've decided to integrate it. So Danny Eade, if you're listening to this, please do a deep dive there. I know you'll uncover far more than we can.
Yeah, it's amazing. And that organic growth is exactly what we're looking for. We want to see that flywheel effect. We start to build that initial infrastructure, and then people start to build on top of it. So it's great to see these use cases popping up, but it's also good that some of the teams are thinking outside the box. We have Upside Co-op, which we covered a fair amount, but they came out with a clip recently describing the framework that they're trying to pioneer. So listen into that real quick.
Web3 is more than non-fungible JPEGs and crypto tokens. It's a new way of organizing ourselves, where ownership is distributed among everyone in the organization. This method of fair, decentralized ownership is actually the oldest form of human organization. The cooperative, a border-friendly legal entity designed for organizations with distributed ownership and assets. Recently, Oric, one of the largest legal firms in the world, KPMG, one of the largest accounting firms in the world, and the Upside Cooperative, a cooperative design and technology company, have worked together on a research paper to establish the details of how Web3 organizations can keep their current operations and assets as functioning, while adding legal representation in the ownership of the organization and the products that they create, like NFTs and tokens. Upside.coop provides a compliant way for Web3 projects, content creators, brands, and more to unlock the power of their community, with ownership.
So I love what these guys are doing. Of course, they are the team behind Hashgraph Name Service. They're thinking outside the box. They are trying to come up with frameworks that kind of clear up some of the regulatory gray area that we talk about all the time. The next thing we wanted to cover is Paul Barron did a fantastic video on Hedera. What were your thoughts about what you saw there?
Yeah, so Paul Barron has covered Hedera previously in the past, but this is the most bullish I've ever seen him. He goes through extensively what Hedera is doing. He talks about Dell joining the council. He does a council overview, talks about the LG and the LG Art Lab. He goes into the sustainability with his interview with Mance. He goes into the increase in developer activity that we've seen recently through sentiment feed. And he basically just gives his own thesis on why, not financial advice, Hedera in his eyes is a long-term hold. And he actually goes as far to say, out of this entire industry, he believes there's 3 players that can enable enterprise and thus mainstream adoption. And within that top 3, he didn't say where he put us, but within that top 3, Hedera is there and very much at the forefront of his thesis. That was a great interview, and I highly suggest watching it.
Well, of course, we've believed that for a really long time, but it's great to see others that are taking that same stance. So we've talked about Pangolin, the cross-chain DEX going live. They went live last week. They had a couple bugs in the very beginning, but I used them over the past few days, and it seems like all of their functions, whether it's farming, whether it's swaps, whether it's providing liquidity, are all working flawlessly right now. Have you been able to use Pangolin to this point?
Yeah, so I have staked HBAR. So I've received an NFT, which is the visualization of my stake, and that's going smoothly. So yeah, I haven't had any issues since the bugs have been resolved.
Good stuff. And the HBAR Foundation had an announcement this week, the AfroFutureDAO launch. Can you give us some more information on that?
Yeah, so this week it came out that AfroFutureDAO, who do a lot of investment in the Africa region, they've got their own governance token, which is now migrating to the HTS. They announced their $1 million Africa Metaverse Fund. And so this is a fund that is $1 million is a lot anywhere, but particularly in Africa, it can get you quite a good bang for your buck. So hopefully we're going to see a lot of creators coming in. Africa is obviously a massively creative continent. And so far it hasn't really tapped into Web3 or at least realized its potential there. There's some fantastic NFT artists, don't get me wrong at all, but we haven't seen many sort of high caliber projects come out of there yet. And so hopefully through this collaboration, through this Metaverse Fund, which is for enabling projects to build on Hedera specifically, we're going to see a lot more coming out of Africa. And so their first project, they launched with a project, which, we always love to see. Their first project they've launched with is called Derived. And Derived is in collaboration with 2 big museums so far in Africa, which are basically preserving the heritage of the rich African culture and history within these digital archives that they have the lock and key for. And so in combination, or rather in partnership with both Derived, with HBAR NFTs, the Hedera token service, these museums and also African artists, they are licensing all of their photographs, all of their rich historical images to these artists, so that these artists can then remix them, i.e. edit them in Photoshop, whatever it is, and then sell them as NFTs. And so what this enables is not only the museum, these African museums to monetize on leasing out these photos, or rather allowing other artists to use the licenses for them, but the NFT artist is also profiting. So you have two parties here within Africa, within this fund, that are directly benefiting from this project. And obviously also Hedera is as well, because it uses the Hedera token service. So yeah, for the first project to launch, I thought it was great. They've got 5 high-profile artists that they've launched with. Some of them have about 30K followers, I think, on Twitter. So yeah, all around a great announcement, and I'm really excited to see investment in the African continent.
Yeah, well, that's one of my big hopes for Hedera and the DLT space in general, is to unlock, that economic potential of literally billions throughout the world. And that's going to help everybody throughout the world, but particularly those people that are in some of those other areas that haven't been able to tap into capitalism, certainly like we would like to see. And Zeb, the Sustainable Impact Fund had a lot of news that came out this week as well. Can you run us through that?
Yeah, so they released their 5-part investment thesis on where they're sort of distributing capital to ensure the growth of this regenerative finance, ESG, sustainability ecosystem. And so the first blog was part 1, making climate finance auditable. The second one was digitizing and open sourcing methodologies. The third part was scaling validation and verification. The fourth was discovering a global carbon price. And the last one, making ESG reporting credible. And so in each of these 5 blogs, they outline where they're attributing capital, and what holes they've noticed in the whole of the Web3 ecosystem, and how those holes can be patched up to genuinely make DLT a technology that can fundamentally shape and invigorate these markets and unlock, like they said, a global carbon price. And so this covers, like the open source, technologies like the ARM, i.e. the automated regression market makers for, discovering liquidity in, for highly complex assets like semi-fungible tokens, like carbon credits. But also things like, the open source Guardian, which is run by Envision Blockchain, and all of the ecosystem partners that are within there using these open source technologies. So, of course, that's Dovu, Timeless, Cryptsy, Coop Stage, and so on and so forth. The list is really, really extensive for the amount of grantees in that ecosystem. And this all comes together to basically show how they are changing these markets, who they're investing in and why. And it's clearly being picked up. I mean, I think yesterday, Wes Geisenberger, i.e. the head of the Sustainable Impact Fund, it came out that he was voted in one of the most influential people in Web3 by Cointelegraph. So that, if that's not validation for the work they're doing, I don't know what is. That in itself is fantastic. It's great to see Wes getting that recognition, and the refi ecosystem that Hedera really is not only growing and expanding, but almost front running. It's with the technology, the Guardian, it's the best in class solution for climate finance within the world of DLT. And, clearly we're building an ecosystem around that. And this refi narrative, I think we really can be in a position to front run that when that comes around. It's growing more and more. And maybe one day we'll get a refi summer, who knows? And, we could be at the very forefront of that. But, even beyond, those blogs, even beyond Wes getting that recognition, we saw a collaboration between Timeless and Dovu. Dovu obviously being a family favorite within the HBAR ecosystem. They've got their own brilliant, community in itself that operates within us. But they teamed up with Timeless to enable I think, complete sort of carbon offsetting within the Timeless platform. I haven't fully deep dove there, but it's great to see these synergies within our ecosystem. And of course, the Sustainable Impact Fund is a force to reckon with. So I'm sure there's only going to be more news there as we go forward.
Yeah, and of course, Hedera, with being hyper efficient, is a perfect home for all these environmental use cases. But we're going to move from one end of our ecosystem to the other. We're going to move over into gaming. Liithos had another huge week. What have we seen come out of Liithos?
So Liithos have not only published their second NFT collection with Michael Lee, of course, 53 million followers on Twitter, on TikTok. Not only have they done that, and they've now got over 1 million views in total on their first two videos. The Liithos mint link is still in Michael Lee's bio, who of course has that huge following. But they've also partnered with Bounty Block. And so Bounty Block are another ecosystem participant. They enable sort of gamification of engagement. So you can work with them for social promotions, for marketing, and that you get sort of points based on what you do. So, whether that's retweeting, commenting, following, doing an action, you get points for doing an action item. And as I understand, those points are redeemable within Bounty Block for certain perks. So they've teamed up again with Liithos. Again, great to see Michael really, really pushing out, not into just his corner of the ecosystem, but really reaching out and getting involved there. So if you go over to Michael Mombauer's page, you can see what they're doing over there, and it's a really cool collaboration, and everyone can enter. So please do.
And I saw this morning that the episodes on TikTok just crossed over 1 million views total between the two episodes. So I'm sure that's going to continue going forward. So I did catch up with another one of the teams that are building in our space. It's Legends of the Past. I talked to their CEO, so listen into that. So Basile, what is it that you're building? What exactly is Legends of the Past?
So Legend of the Past is a Web3 real-time battle game that is based on people that have shaped history. So did you know that those historical figures are all gathered in this heaven of legends? And at first, everyone was very happy, but they soon realized that if everyone was legendary, ultimately no one was legendary. And so their egos were hurt. And so Daedalus and Leonardo da Vinci both created this arena of legends in which now all soldiers, philosophers, scientists, artists from all around the history are now battling against each other to become the ultimate legend of the past. And what's amazing is recently some selected mortals managed to get their hand on a heaven key. And earlier today, they've entered the Heaven of Legends and they've received their first gift, which is a gift imbued with the power of the gods, which is an infinity jar.
Oh, that is so cool. So can you tell us a little bit more about the gameplay and how exactly you play?
Yeah. So Legend of the Past is a competitive Web3 multiplayer mobile game in which you will control and embody a historical character that will battle against other legends in procedurally generated historical arenas. Let's take an example. So you'll be playing with Cleo. It's not Cleopatra, it's Cleo. It's an alternate version of the Cleopatra you studied in school. And with Cleo, you'll be battling against, let's say, Nikola Tesla in his lab with some other like AI enemies that will support him as well. And the winner will receive some artifacts, in the form of NFTs that you'll be either able to use on your character or maybe trade it to someone else. Let's say that you get your hand on Excalibur. Maybe it would make more sense to trade it to another player that plays with King Arthur. So our game is competitive, but we are also building some co-op mode in which players will be able to team up together against historical boss, and together they will try to defeat this historical boss. But what if they betray their alliances and turn rogue on the others? That could happen as well.
So speaking of teams, can you tell us about your team and who's behind Legends of the Past?
Well, we are very proud and very excited to have gathered and put in shape this great team coming from the best studios. So we took the time and the resource to hire the right person, the right talent at the right moment. And we first started with our art director, which has a huge experience in building mobile games. At first, Ankama, then Supercell, and then at many other gaming studios. So, and then with our lead game designer, Marvin, who's worked at Ubisoft on Assassin's Creed Valhalla and other games for Sony PlayStation. So with this first talent, we build the pre-production of the game, so the art and the gameplay. And then later on, this helped us to attract other enthusiasts and professionals that also comes from the best gaming studios. So I'm also talking again about those Supercell, maybe Tap for Fun and other worldwide class gaming studios. And with this team, so we are attracting other like professionals. And I think it's important for us in our values at the studio that it's based on freedom and openness, and where everyone, it's the game of everyone of the studio and everyone work on the same level to build and to make Legend of the Past something that is unique in terms of gameplay and in terms of experience for the players.
I am so impressed with the gaming teams that Hedera is starting to attract. Why did you guys choose to build on Hedera?
I think there are two main reasons. The first one, well, three ones, I would say. First, the technology, then the community, and last, the mission. I'll start with the technology. Well, basically, the hash graph is absolutely amazing for games. People don't know that, but the technology is insane. When it comes to like trading NFTs at the same time at a large amount with always a significantly low fee. So that's amazing. And that's what we are aiming for our game design, for trading artifacts at the same time. And you also have amazing features in the ICS to like upgrade NFTs. So the tech is scalable, reliable, and very, very fast. So it's very efficient for games. But also now I'm going to talk about the community. I think there are two steps of the production of the game. The first one is while we are actually building the game, right now the HBAR Barbarians are a team of like passionate, people, either community members or also like builders as well. And with this, community of passionate people, we are building the game with them and for them. So that's an amazing place to be in right now. And we are building a lot of bonds and connections with other games that are building on the hash graph. So that's amazing. And the last reason, I think it's the mission of the hash graph. We as a gaming studio, we identify and our beliefs are highly aligned, because Lehman Baird said that he believes that one day billions of people will be using the hash graph, but they will not know that they are actually using it. And I think it's quite of the same with our game Legend of the Past. We are not a Web3 specific game. We are a multiplayer, massive online game for mobile. And so meaning that players that are not related to crypto, to NFT or whatever, they will enter because they see an ad of our game and they find it cool. And then progressively, they will be able to like earn and own those artifacts, those that are actual NFTs, and they will trade it to other players, but they will receive some digital currency. They're not aware of the Web3 aspect of it. And so our mission is definitely aligned with the one of Hedera. And so because we want to take and use the hash graph to take, real gamers, real players by the hand and make them understand and embrace the potential of Web3 inside video games.
Well, that's a wonderful vision, and we're happy to have you building on Hedera. What can H-Barbarians expect in the future?
So I believe that Web3 is all about, sharing value and building something together by empowering, individuals and also community. And so we truly believe that by working together, we can make Legend of the Past something truly special. And so H-Barbarians can, join in, help us build Legend of the Past. They can support us. And I think that to build something that is, that sticks together and is sustainable in the long run, our goal and our mission is to provide value to our community. Meaning that when we're going to do some private sale or through NFT, for instance, it will always be at an accessible price and in a reasonable supply to allow, multiple drops over time and to provide value to users. Because we will not prioritize short-time gains, by all speculating with tokens, but we are working to create something that is sustainable or valuable ecosystem. And as we said earlier, we've created today a first experience for our Heaven Keys owners that managed to enter the Heaven of Legends earlier today to receive their first Infinity Jar. So now that the tech is working great and we have very, very positive and smooth feedback for our first community, we are now preparing to open the doors of the Heaven of Legends to even more mortals who wants to get their hand on this infinity jar will provide a lot of values, and progressively will then introduce the second characters, because each character, the first one is Clio, each character will be sold in again at an accessible price at a limited supply to create something together with the HBAR community.
It sounds like the perfect fit for the Hedera community. Basile, thank you so much for swinging by today and telling us about your game.
Thank you very much. That was a pleasure.
Yeah, so it's great to hear from Basil. He's one of my favorite people actually that I've spoken to, who's building in Hedera. And he comes from, this great caliber of a team. I keep saying the word caliber, but, high caliber seems to be the common theme of people building and operating within our ecosystem. And so much to the extent that on his team, you've got ex-Ubisoft, you've got ex-Supercell, who, created Clash of Clans, which I think is the most popular mobile game in terms of at least downloads or revenue, one of the two. And he's leading the art design. So you've got Supercell, Ubisoft, and some other teams as well. And they're, all come together for Legends of the Past, which is a mobile gaming game. And, we hear this term AAA thrown around a lot when talking about, big games like Liithos. But one of the most emerging parts of the gaming ecosystem globally, I think the fastest growing ecosystem within gaming isn't console. It's not PS4. It's not Xbox. It's mobile gaming. Mobiles are at a point now where they're so powerful that they can really run good-looking games. They're easy to download. They're easy to play when you're on the train or wherever you're going. And so there's this huge market, gaming on the mobile, which is emerging or is in the process of accelerating. And so to see, I think, such a high caliber team pushing a mobile gaming app on Hedera, we've obviously got Liithos, Cosmian, Astronova, and a lot of others building on the more computer side of things or the console side of things. And so to have a team like Legends of the Past doing the same thing on mobile, it's great. And hopefully, when that comes out, I'm not sure how far out that's going to be, but, with a team like that emerging on a technology like Hedera in an industry like mobile gaming, I think we could be off to the races there. And they're a great team, having spoken to them. So excited to follow them in their journey.
Yeah, pleasure to talk to him. He's a really pleasant guy, and I think our gaming space as a whole is just going to knock it out of the park in the years to come. So I'd be remiss not to cover the big story over the past 24 hours, and that's the CEO of Coinbase, Brian Armstrong, came out and he tweeted, "We're hearing rumors that the SEC would like to get rid of crypto staking in the US for retail customers. I hope that's not the case, as I believe it would be a terrible path for the US if allowed to happen." In his second tweet in the thread, he said, "Staking is a really important innovation in crypto and allows users to participate directly in running open crypto networks. Staking brings many positive improvements to the space, including scalability, increased security, and reduced carbon footprints." And he goes on to say, staking is not a security. Here's a good primer, and he references Paradigm, a paper that was put out on the subject. Now, of course, proof of stake is one of the ways that we get to become far more efficient in the DLT space, and then great algorithms like Hedera has takes us the rest of the way. Now, you don't have to go any further than the study by UCL that shows that Hedera is 1,000 times more efficient per transaction than Visa to justify the need of proof of stake. But I also want to highlight that Brian is a fantastic CEO, but he is focused on one thing, and that is Coinbase. And we don't have all the facts about what he's talking about here. He may just be referring to retail customers using an intermediary like Coinbase, and then Coinbase using the rewards they get from their wallet and passing them on to retail customers. That is very different from natively staking your own tokens through your own wallet and helping increase the security of a proof of stake network like Hedera. So from my point of view, I think we want to wait and figure out exactly what's going on. Of course, if the SEC does come out and they say they want to ban staking, then we make our push. And I'm sure there's people already working behind the scenes to make sure that our space is properly represented. And now we'll get into what the Hedera network is doing with some network analysis. We'll take a look at Metrica here. And over the past 24 hours, we have about 47 million transactions completed. Time to consensus is still sitting just under 5 seconds. And Zep, account growth has looked pretty strong as well. What do we have there?
Yeah, so I mean, in the last week, we've seen 100% increase in account creation. We're at 93,000, just above, which is, that's a big amount of, so it's nearly 5% of all the accounts on our ledger created in the last week. And then we look at a month, and we've got 200,000 new accounts created over the last month, which is over 10% of all the accounts on our ledger, which is just incredible. We're with the momentum behind us, both in terms of TPS, governing council, use cases, and account creation is just staggering. So yeah, what a great sight to see on the account front.
Yeah, no question about that. Nothing huge to pass on as far as the fungible tokens. We have our usual suspects. We have energy trade tokens, Sauce, Wrapped HBAR, Dovu, USDC, of course, HBARX, and so on. But we do have some excitement going on in the non-fungible department. And this is in the past 24 hours. Ashfall 2 has had over 25,000 transactions. Ashfall 1 has a couple hundred. And I see ElfU, so that's the cosmetic company use case. They have a couple hundred as well. And Zeb, we've also had some successful token drops this week. Can you tell us about those?
Yeah, so Dead Pixels had their Gen 4 mint. There was a slight technical issue. Basically, people who had the whitelist token were meant to be whitelisted, and you meant to get sort of the priority essentially. And there's a bit of a mishap there, whereby I think about half of them were minted without whitelist, so the mint is currently paused. And when you think that you think that's a bit annoying or whatever, whatever, but then you realize how well the mint has done, despite only having released I think 500 ghosts into the wild. It took us to the 5th spot, Zeus Market to the 5th spot on DApp radar. So the only other competing chains against us there above us was Ethereum. So we're above Polygon, we're above Avalanche, we're above all of these other exchanges. And we were, I think it was like 1.6 million HBAR volume within 24 hours, just on Dead Pixels alone, on secondaries. So, I mean, that just shows, what an astounding team to have managed to generate that much hype and demand and, exclusivity around these drops. That there's that many people trying to mint, even without whitelists, but also then going straight onto Zeus Market to then buy them. The floor has only come down a tiny bit, which is a very positive indicator, because normally when new goats come in, supply goes up, demand, the price goes down, but we haven't seen much of an impact on the floor price, which shows there are people very hungry to get their hands on Dead Pixels. So yeah, great job to the team. They've been incredible so far. And I'm looking forward to using my whitelist when that gets sorted. So yeah, if you do have a whitelist and you didn't manage to mint, the team are currently coming up with a solution for that. So not to worry there.
All right, good to hear. Impressive. And also Astronova came out with some information as well.
Yeah, so Astronova, they're minting their Deviants NFTs firstly on Ethereum to try and get liquidity and users from Ethereum to then port them over to Hedera. So their game is entirely built on Hedera. And they sold out their 5,555 Deviants, or whatever it was. It was a part of the Deviant collection. I think their mint some kind of mint pass or something. That went out in 12 minutes. So 5,555 in 12 minutes, which is a lot of people minting. So I'm looking forward, I think, to seeing what Astronova does here, seeing how they are attracting this liquidity, and hopefully users as well through that to then bring them over to the game once it launches on Hedera. So yeah, they've done a great job in marketing themselves there and getting that hype going.
Yeah, another great gaming team. And this weekend, we have another huge event. So back in October, we had something called Hedera-ween, and it was put on by Generation Infinity. We talked about this a little bit last week, but they're going to be doing Hashentines this weekend. There's going to be all kinds of prizes associated with this. It's going to be a 2-day event starting at 11:30 to 2:30 on Saturday, and then the same time on Sunday, and those are Eastern times. But it's going to be a huge event. We got one of the Barry Ball NFTs, a TV from LG. I'm going to be giving away one of my 1 centers as well. I'm going to try to get involved with at least one of those days. I want to be on there for the whole time. But we caught up with King Solomon, who of course is the CEO of Genfinity, to give us some more information. Solomon, can you explain the Hashentines event and about some of the success you've enjoyed with similar events in the past?
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, Hashentines is a group of, well, it's a 2-day event this Saturday and Sunday, the 11th and the 12th, I believe, from 11:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, both days. We have over 30 projects, over 100 NFTs, about 250,000 HBAR in NFTs and tokens. And it's all the projects coming together to kind of really showcase the power of the Hedera ecosystem and give back to the current community and new community members. The success that we've had in the past, we facilitated Hedera Ween back in October of last year. We had about 7,000 people join that Twitter space, about 8,000 now with people that tuned in afterwards. We were able to create and onboard about 6,000 plus new Hedera Hashgraph ecosystem users, and pretty similar as far as what we were able to facilitate from a project standpoint, about 30 plus projects, around 300,000 HBAR and NFTs and tokens.
Awesome. That is unbelievable. And I know we did talk to Blade Wallet about getting one of those Barry Ball NFTs. That's a $1,000 NFT by itself. And they're also giving away a 55-inch TV, and that's going to be involved with the event as well. So what should people do to get involved?
So we have 2 tweets on @GenfinityIO on our Twitter right now. We definitely want people in the Twitter spaces. There's a tweet that has the Twitter spaces for Saturday. There's a tweet that has the Twitter spaces for Sunday, as well as a form that you will fill out with all the information to participate. Obviously, a random giveaway. And then if you could retweet and tag some other ecosystems, whether it be Ethereum, Solana, Avalanche, anybody else, try to really showcase the value and pull as many people from outside the ecosystem into the ecosystem. And there's really no excuse because, I mean, there's a ton of awesome prizes within it for free for the community. So,
yeah, for sure. Well, Ryan, I'm certainly going to be there. Thanks for coming and good luck with it.
Thank you very much, Brandon. Appreciate it all as always.
All right, so I'm definitely looking forward to Hashentines. And with that, let's get into DeFi. Looking at Saucer Swap, their total value locked is sitting at about $30 million. And the farming rewards on some of their popular trading pairs, HBAR USDC is sitting at 53%, and HBAR HBAR-X is at 14%. And looking at their LP rewards, HBAR HBAR-X is at 0.7%, Sauce HBAR is just over 2%, and USDC HBAR is an impressive 12.4%. The total value locked on HeliSwap is at $7.5 million. And I think their total value locked has a lot of potential once they bring on their Heli token, that's their native token, and they start to supplement their farming rewards. Looking at some of their farming rewards, USDC HBAR is at 44%, and HBAR-X HBAR is at 11%. And moving on to the crypto and HBAR markets, HBAR is outperforming significantly. Over the past week, Bitcoin is down about 8% and about 2% over the past 24 hours. Ethereum is down the same over the past week and about 3% over the past 24 hours. Compare that to HBAR, which is up 13% over the past week and 9% over the past 24 hours. And that's allowed us to move into the 32nd spot on CoinGecko. Taking a look at the chart, at the time of recording, we're sitting at 7.6 cents. You can clearly see the spike when Dell was announced as a governing council member, and we've held on to those gains really nicely. We've set up some good support around 6.8 cents, a nice series of higher lows and higher highs, and it looks like resistance between 7.8 and 8 cents. Now, one thing that does come up when it comes to HBAR is the additional supply of HBAR that gets added to the market as various entities build out the ecosystem. And Shane had a great interview with Bearable Bull where he talked about it.
Because of everything that you just said that is being built out, the number of partners, the number of use cases, that comes with the fat tab, believe it or not. Some people at home may not know this, but developing new ecosystems is expensive. And there has been one critique that constantly comes up when it comes to HBAR and the HBAR Foundation, and that is the increase in the supply of HBAR onto the market, because that has caused the price to go lower than maybe a lot of people may have wanted. So what I'll ask you is to kind of explain the reason for why the supply increase was had, and really what those funds and that HBAR gets used for.
Great question. I think that, from the supply perspective, I'm not in a position, because I don't approve of, when the supply gets increased. That's a governing council decision by Hedera. And so for clarity, we, as the HBAR Foundation, received 5.35 billion HBAR starting in November of 2021. And so there was a number of HBAR, specifically 10.7 billion HBAR. I believe it was in September of 21 when the foundation was announced, either shortly before or after, for ecosystem development. And this was outlined by Hedera as a part of their plan. We received 5.35 billion of the 10.7 billion allocated for ecosystem development. So when folks believe that all of a sudden there was this release of all these HBAR out into the market, that was just simply not the case, number one. Number two, the 5.35 billion that we had, we're holding it in our own treasury. Certainly we're giving grants, but we haven't paid out all of those grants. You know, a portion of our granting has milestones associated to it. You know, we see, while our primary role is certainly to incentivize developers and entrepreneurs, et cetera, to build on top of us, we do see our primary role as good capital allocators, right? And so what does that mean? We're not just going and giving somebody $100,000 grant and just saying go, right? And oh, by the way, that's unlocked. Every grant that we have has some sort of performance or market driven relationship to it, because we want to make sure that we're not putting good money after bad. And so some of this color commentary, I think, is likely important so that people don't think that Hedera and or the HBAR Foundation have just thrown caution to the wind, and now all of a sudden you've got all of this out into the market. While it adds to what, you know, the calculation of circulating supply, not all of that supply is truly in circulation with projects, if you will. Yes, 5.35 billion is circulating to us, and then we're trying to determine how to be good capital allocators, but that's not all happening at once. And so, you know, hopefully that helps provide some level of context to how this is getting deployed. If you look at the aggregate number and you just go, oh my goodness, circulating supply is whatever the number is today, all of that is now in circulation. That's simply not the case.
Excellent. And that's really the point I wanted to hammer home. It's that they're responsible stewards of the supply of HBAR. I can't just go to you and ask for $1 million, right?
Right. No. You could ask, but we're likely not to give it to you.
Exactly.
And we're certainly not going to give it to you unless there are either market-based performance factors or delivery milestones associated to it.
Exactly. And part of what you added as well is that while the supply may be calculated as being on the open market, right, as part of, the coin metrics, that does not mean it's just being flooded onto the market and sold and things like that. It's being used strategically to build out the ecosystem. I think what you just said is really
well. It is, and I think let me say this, Bearable, because I'm on Twitter and I see a lot of the comments as well, though I don't comment on them individually. This idea that the retail investors have funded, everything is simply not true. While I'm not saying that they haven't, certainly, if they're deciding to buy the token and help us secure the network, that's great. But, at the end of the day, just to give you an idea, give you a number to hold on to, which I think, should be a positive number. 93% of the grants that we've given, the dollar amounts that we've given, have milestones associated to it. And so they have to achieve milestones 1, 2, 3, some have, 10 milestones before they can get the full amount. This helps us be good capital allocators, and it gives us the opportunity to make sure, because listen, things change, right? It's software. People get delayed for whatever reason. They run into an issue and it takes longer to get where they need to get. And it allows us to have a conversation with the grantee and to figure out how can we help them get through the barrier, get over the hump, achieve what it is that they want to achieve, and have those regular conversations, as opposed to giving them a significant amount of unlocked HBAR and just say go. We take that very seriously. And I think our projects appreciate that, because many of them they don't necessarily know what they don't know. And we just want to be good partners with all of them. And we know we have multiple constituents, the projects, the community members who are doing great work, and those that are HBAR holders. And we just want to do what's right by all of them, while building this ecosystem and the network effects that we hope to create.
Zeb, the one thing that I'm curious about is once all these entities like the HBAR Foundation have done much of their work building out the ecosystem in a few years, but we have all of that infrastructure and the ecosystem has been built out, but that additional supply isn't hitting the market. What does that look like? That's what really excites me about the future. So overall, right now, I'm really happy with what we're seeing in the HBAR market. So what else do you have for us, Zeb?
Yeah, I mean, what a week. You know, we've seen a Fortune 34 join the council. We've seen the sustained 600 plus TPS. We've seen Pangolin launch. We've seen a new metaverse fund in Africa. We've seen, you know, Dead Pixels sell out and take us to the fifth, or sell out their 500 and take us to the fifth on DAP radar for NFTs. We've seen, you know, projects that aren't getting funding from the foundation growing organically. You know, we've seen just account creation go through the roof. We've seen, you know, all of our metrics are just exploding. And then, you know, don't even get me started on CoinMarketCap. You know, we're now, I think, 31st on there. You know, putting us above Algo, putting us above Quant, putting us above Near, Ape, Filecoin. We've just, you know, we've there's so much more awareness coming onto our ecosystem. There is so much more reason than ever for us to be excited about our ecosystem. And it seems that the wider market and influencers and voices and Twitter people are noticing that. You know, we got that amazing coverage from Paul Barron. I think we're expecting an interview from him at some point as well, which is something to look out for. So I just think in general, people are realizing that Hedera is robust. It does what it says on the tin and goes far beyond that. And it is, like Paul Barron said, one of the top 3 networks that is going to enable this mainstream adoption. And so we're seeing that all happening before our eyes. After a long, patient wait, it is all coming together. And I couldn't be more excited for it.
So, Zeb, I always expect us to see this kind of growth, but it's still kind of shocking to see it come to fruition. Of course, next week we're going to have our Twitter space. I'm not sure if it's going to be at 1600 or 1800 on Tuesday, but we'll figure that out as we go forward. Hashentines this weekend. I caught an interview with LG, so that's going to be coming out next week as well. So all kinds of fun stuff with that. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.